Negative equity on cars is higher than it's ever been. Repo rates are sky high and trending even higher. Average monthly payments on new cars is at an all-time high. And interest rates are about as high as Mount Everest. This spells disaster. And how did we get here? And how is this going to play out? And is this the year that, yes, you and me, us buyers, are finally going to have the advantage? Well, like, subscribe, and let's go. So, repo rates continuing to climb is the first ingredient of this recipe of disaster. Repo rates for cars have seen an uptick in 2024, and we can see that close to 6% of borrowers are at least 60 days late on their car payments, and it's continuing to rise, and that's super high. This all happened because during the pandemic, people took out big loans, where the average price of a new car was at an all-time high of $47,000. Thanks to dealerships adding additional dealer markups or ADMs, like this ADM on a 2022 GTI Autobahn 6-speed that was at MSRP plus $2,500 or $7,000 over plus a mandatory $3,000 platinum protective package you didn't even need on this iconic 5 Limited SUV. Or even this $70,000 MSRP Mustang Dark Horse with a $60,000 markup. When you pay that markup, let's take that $130,000 Mustang for example, and you just drive it off the lot. That's it. Then decide you don't want it and sell it for fair market value, which is roughly $74,000 as you can see here, because this one just sold for that. You would lose $56,000 for one joyride in your one-trick pony. And none of my friends nor most Americans can afford that loss. But see, everyone that paid a dealer markup in the past couple of years is driving a car that is worth way less than they have paid. That 2022 Volkswagen GTI Autobahn that you paid $38,000 MSRP for, plus that $2,500 ADM, is now worth $31,795 or $8,700 less. And that Ioniq 5 Limited that had an MSRP of $56,000 and you paid $66,000 for is now worth $35,000 or $31,000 financial hit. And if you took out that $66,000 loan, which most people were doing, you'd still owe over $46,000 for a car that was only worth $35,000, AKA you're underwater $11,000. That's only after a couple of years. Now, making payments on a car that's worth way less than your loan amount is why repossession rates are up 21% over the past year. Yes, more people than ever are getting their cars taken away. But let's dig just a little bit deeper. Now, this explains a lot. And if you're enjoying the video so far, like and subscribe. You see, the share of new vehicle purchases involving trade-ins with negative equity rose to roughly 1/4 of all sales, reaching 23.1% in Q1 of 2024. And that's up 5% year over year and up roughly 10% from Q1 of 2022. And guys, this is bad. The average amount of negative equity on those trade-ins reached an all-time high of $6,167 this year. People are starting to trade in those overpriced cars they purchased during the pandemic and are just rolling it over into new loans, which puts them underwater on the new loan right from the get-go. You see, if the average negative equity is $6,000, when you trade in a car with $6,000 negative equity, it means you owe $6,000 more on your current car loan than the car is actually worth. That $6,000 doesn't just disappear like a magic trick. It's rolled into your new car loan. So if you're taking out a $50,000 loan for a new car, that $6,000 negative equity from your old car would be added to the new loan, making the total amount $56,000. Essentially, you're financing the new car plus the leftover debt from the old car. And this means higher monthly payments and possibly paying more in interest over the time of your loan because you're financing a larger amount. So why is this the new norm? Well, this one graph speaks 1,000 words. This is the US retail inventory at car dealerships and parts stores. And in 2019 and 2020, it was at roughly 240 billion. Then, with supply shortages, you can see it quickly dipped to almost half in just a few short months, hitting its low just before 2022, and supply has been steadily climbing since to pre-pandemic levels, which means average lot times followed suit. See here, In 2020, average lot times on new vehicles sat before they were sold was about 50 days. Then in 2021, it was just over 15 days. In 2022, it was just under 25 days. And in 2023, it was just under 30 days. It's simple economics, supply and demand. And with less supply and more demand, well, dealers were able to charge those additional dealer markups that were sky high, essentially screwing the customer. And remember which dealerships were screwing customers, because you should not give them your business now, even if they're willing to haggle a little bit. And if you want to learn how to haggle and negotiate like a pro, well, check out our brand new free workshop on how to buy an ideal car. I've linked to it in the pinned first comment. Now, the other thing is you have to factor in the fact that the government gave pretty much everyone a stimulus check. Yeah, federal lawmakers enacted a $2 trillion economic stimulus package in 2020 that sent most Americans checks of up to $1,200. And then they gave a few more free money checks after that to keep stimulating the economy. And plus the suspension of student loan repayments, where if you were eligible, they automatically paused your loan payments and put your interest rate to 0% for 3.5 years. The average American, well, we had more money and time on our hands than ever before. So everyone and me wanted new wheels to get around. Well, we saw the supply of vehicles was at an all-time low in 2022 and money was cheap to borrow. In February 2022, average interest rates for cars was just 4.5%. So everyone and their mom was borrowing money to take on all-time high new car costs. But there was one big problem that caused a drastic uptick in interest rates. As we can see here, inflation started to really get out of hand in late 2021. So the Federal Reserve raised their benchmark interest rates. This has a direct tie to auto rates, and a rising tide raises all ships. Now, we'll touch on what inflation did to car prices in just one sec. But for auto loans, people kept pushing their auto loans of almost $50,000 on average out to longer terms to keep their payments reasonable, while interest rates kept climbing, because the further your loan goes out, the more the interest is. It's sad to think at the peak, someone paying 10% interest on their $50,000 car, after 6 years of repayment, they'd be all in at roughly $74,000. I mean, guys, just check out this 2019 BMW 3 Series. On average, they were roughly $50,000. So if you bought it brand new in 2018, you'd spend $50,000, or well, you'd get that loan for 50 grand, plus you'd pay interest for 6 years. So your total cost of ownership would be $74,000. And today that car's only worth 25 grand. Ay, ay, ay. But why did car prices become sky high? Well, let's look holistically at new car prices over the years and how it compares to inflation. Yep, over the past decade, more or less new car prices have been ticking up at a relatively similar rate to inflation, with the average new price of $48,000 in September of 2022, which is a lot of money. Now, let's look at MSRPs on popular vehicles in 2019, pre-pandemic, versus today. Vehicles like the Toyota 4Runner. A 2019 4Runner started at $35,000 and it had a car and driver rating of 4 out of 10. Now, the 2023 4Runner, literally the exact same truck, still a 4 out of 10 rating from car and driver, and it starts at $41,000. A $6,000 increase on a truck that in a side-by-side comparison when new, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a 2019 and a 2023. Or what about a 2019 Nissan GTR with a starting price of just under $100,000? Wow, the 2023 GTR has a starting price of $116,000. That's not hard math. That's a 16% increase in price for the exact same Nissan. Huh. These price increases aren't because they're new models or have way more tech and features. It's literally due to one thing: inflation. The last 5 years have been a whirlwind of unprecedented change, and on average, new car prices have increased by about 32% since 2018. And is the end in sight? Well, let's take a look at electric vehicles first. EVs were hot, but now they're not. For the first time in history, the most popular new car across the planet was electric. It was the Tesla Model Y and sold more than 1.2 million units in 2023. But what goes up must come down. And as we can see from year over year, sales numbers are dropping drastically. And you wonder why? Well, how about first depreciation? If you bought a 2022 Model Y brand new for $75,000, today it's worth $34,000, or about $55,000 less in just a couple of years. And unfortunately, that is the new norm when it comes to EVs, which is unfortunate because they're all really good cars. But the amount of depreciation is more insane than their acceleration. But you know what that means? You can buy a cheap Tesla Model 3 like this long range for 15,000 bucks. And that is a lot of car for not a lot of money. But the people that want EVs already own them. And us folks who are scared of high insurance costs, range anxiety, and how the world am I gonna charge this thing if I live in an apartment on the 4th story and park it on the street? Well, yeah, those people aren't buying them, at least yet. So these EVs and other cars are now sitting longer on dealers' lots, so what do these dealers do with them when they can't sell them? Now, we just did a whole video on CarMax and how they're in the gutter. And one of the eye-opening stats was the fact that CarMax bought 234,000 vehicles from consumers and dealers, which was down versus last year's 4th quarter. But 21,000 of those vehicles were purchased through dealers. That was up 44.8% from last year's 4th quarter. It's a huge rise. So why are dealers selling their cars to CarMax instead of customers like you and me? Well, essentially dealers have more inventory and less demand, and so they're sitting longer on lots. Add in the amount of high auto delinquencies and repossessions, and a huge influx of new used cars are going to wholesale. And they will be showing up on dealer lots in just the next couple of months. And this whole thing takes a couple of months to take effect because dealers need to buy cars at wholesale, recondition them, and then list them, which takes a little bit of time. And with the average days on market for cars at roughly 50 days, which is actually about average, dealers are going to have to start offering discounts to get buyers to actually buy these cars. So if you're looking for a quality ride at a great price, AKA a discount, I'd start looking pretty soon. We're already starting to see new car dealers offer incentives to move new inventory. Like here's a Jeep Gladiator for over 12,000 bucks off. 2 years ago, that had a $12,000 ADM. Or look at this brand new Subaru Forester for $3,000 off. And a Toyota dealer doing a negative dealer adjustment of 2,900 bucks on a new 4Runner? What, have the tides turned? If there's one takeaway from this video, it's this. The flood of repos going to auction is going to cause used car values to plummet as these cars hit the auctions and then the dealerships. And the time to go out and negotiate like a pro using the Ideal Car Strategies free workshop, which I've linked below, is in roughly 2 to 3 months. So go learn how to negotiate like a pro, like, subscribe, and check out some of these other Ideal vids over here. I'm Brad, this is Ideal, see you next week, and promise me one thing, keep living the Ideal lifestyle.